Hearty pranam to everyone. Consciousness, that's our real nature. In spiritual discussion, we listen it. It's always with us. But who will realize it, or who does realize it, that consciousness is our real nature? Very important question arises. Sorry. Who does realize it? People say about consciousness. Here and there we listen about it, that consciousness is our real nature. Yet there is misery in our mind. These two things are contradictory. Or just opposite. If one understands that consciousness is the very nature of I, or consciousness is the nature of human being, it's spontaneous. If anyone understands it, then how is it possible to have the existence of misery in intellect? Any worry or conflict? How is it possible to be without peace inside? If anyone has drunk water sufficiently, within 5 minutes, how is it possible to become thirsty? If the person will be thirsty within 5 seconds or 30 seconds just after consuming sufficient water, it's very strange. Is not so? So, in the same way, in this era or in this time, the time of digital media or social media, here and there we listen about consciousness. Sadhakas, seekers say about it, listen about it, they talk about it, or they make conversation. about consciousness. In any sampradaya or community, directly or indirectly, but the speaker who speaks something on consciousness or who tries to put something about it, that consciousness is our real nature. In other side, there is misery inside with any issue. That means we only learn the word consciousness to listen from someone, to read from any scripture or book, etc. So what's the use of saying like this, that consciousness is our real nature? Yes, very interesting thing is this. All the sages in the Upanishad era, they talk about it. Then their talking are baseless, is not so? Never. There is a very strong or concrete basement behind their speaking, behind their explanation. Yes, very important thing is this. We remember about the Vedic era. There were 4 ashramas: Brahmacharya, Garhastha, Vanaprastha, Sannyasa. Just after completing Brahmacharya ashram of 12 years, seekers or the Vidyarthi used to return their home with the permission of their very respected Guru. When they returned, they returned with Brahma Gyan. This Brahma Gyan is not anything like information, but the very experience, but the very awakening of intellect, which discovers or which discovered that consciousness is a real nature of human being. That's a basic platform on which all the things run. Then the question, who did realize? Answer is that the seeker realized it. The seeker realized that consciousness is the real nature of human being. Seekers who came to Gurukul only for realization of this truth. It was the fundamental aim or target for what they entered the Gurukul with submission. They came to the very lotus feet of Guru. Because they listened that Brahma Gyan is the only one solution by which one's intellect can become free from all type of miseries of mind. It doesn't mean that any injury of physic will not give pain just after Brahmagyan. It never means. If anyone gets injury on the surface of skin, it will be natural. One should treat it properly according to his or her range. It's a separate dimension. But just after having Brahmagyan or Atmanubhuti, one's intellect becomes free from all type of misery of mind, conflict of mind. That's why in that era, I mean in the era of Vedic, in the era of Veda or Vedic period, those seekers used to go to Gurukul, to the lotus feet of Guru, with hearty submission, respect, and through Indriya Sanyam means the controlling of senses. They used to serve in Gurukul according to the instruction of Guruji or Gurudev. Because Gurudev, who already attained the very state of realization, that's why he is called Gurudeva. That's why those seekers went to him. So just after having realization in pure intellect, one understands that consciousness is my real nature. Then the question which arose previously, who understands it, that consciousness is our real nature? Answer is that the seeker who has keen interest, or who is keenly interested, keenly eager, or whose basic need of mind is nothing but having the realization of truth. That or those seekers will understand that consciousness is the very nature of mind. And my dear and respected viewers, there is no way except it to become free from tension, depression, or any type of misery related mind. And it's the greatest discovery in East. That's nothing but the very realization of Brahmanubhuti or Atmanubhuti. So it's not sufficient to say about consciousness, listen about consciousness, talking about consciousness, discussing or discussion about consciousness. Never. If a thirsty person listens about or hears about water, then that's not at all sufficient or enough to fulfill inner thirst. In the same way, to write about consciousness, to speak about consciousness, to listen about consciousness, to make discussion or conversation about consciousness, may be helpful to walk along the way of spirituality. But that is the moment when one will understand in pure intellect, or the very realization will come down in the surface of pure intellect. Here, pure intellect means there is no doubt at all. That very experience or realization will come down the very surface, on the very surface of pure intellect, that I am nothing but pure consciousness. There is no limit. And it's only possible through right inquiry, with the right attitude. So, my dear friends, don't waste your time to solve mind's problem with any temporary process. And think about that which is really effective in true sense. Thank you to everyone to share your time with me.